Welcome all to our channel GTech Fluent. Our today's topic number 30 in ASP.NET Core video series is model binding in ASP.NET Core MVC. So in this video, we'll discuss model binding in ASP.NET Core with an example. So let's start and first we see what is meant by the model binding. Model binding maps data in an HTTP request to the controller action method to the parameters. And the action parameters may be simple types such as integers, strings, etc., or the complex type like student object or other object. The model binding is a great because without we have to write lot of code to map request data to the action method parameter, which is not only tedious but also the error prone. The model binding refers the converting HTTP request data from query string or from form collection to the action parameters. So this parameter can be different type. So there are the two types of the binding. So first type is a binding to the primitive types and next is a binding to the complex type. So let's switch to the Visual Studio and see the example of these two types. So we are in our project which we have created for this video tutorial series. So when an HTTP request arrives or come to our MUC application, so it is the controller action methods that handles the incoming requests. Let's say we want to display the student details. So in this case, we are going to issue or access the action like student slash details slash the ID or the value for the students. So if you run this, and now if you want to access the student details for the ID1, so you need to issue the GET request like student slash details slash 1. When we issue the student GET request with the details ID1, so if you notice the one value getting binded with our ID parameter. So this is called the primitive binding. So if you check our route templates in our application, we have the controller name equal to home, action is equals to set to index, and the parameter name ID is a optional. So the ID value is 1 in the request URL is mapped to the ID parameter of the default int ID action method. So MVC will bind the data in the request to the action parameter by name. In the example we see in the student details, we are passing direct value because the ID is the default parameter into our template. To bind the request data to the controller action method, model binding looks data into the HTTP request into the different places in the order as a form values, route values, and query string. Now let's see what is meant by the binding to the complex type. So model binding also work with the complex types such as the model classes. Consider the create student example which we have created in the previous video of our tutorial. When this form get posted to the server, the values in the form are mapped to the student class inside our create student method. So model binder in ASP.NET Core binds the posted form values to the properties of the student class. For example, the name value is getting binded to the name, the class value is getting binded to the class. So if you notice, we have two method here, first with the HTTP GET and other with the HTTP post. So you need to make sure you have the one GET method and other is the post method. So if you remove this and try to run and access student slash create student, so actually you will get error. This is because ASP.NET Core does not know which action method to be executed, and we want to first execute the GET request for the create student. So that's why we required HTTP GET and the post. So let's revert our changes, and if you run this and access student slash create student, now we will get our student form here. And if you want to create the student, you can create student class A, age 25, GTech Fluent, and if you post this form, you will get the data is binded to our these properties for the particular class. So this is called the complex binding or binding to the complex type. So let's make the change to add the student object inside the list. In the repository, we will add the add action, add, and we'll pass the student class, implement the interface, and we'll simply add inside our student list. We need to add the student object, and inside the student controller, call the add method of the student repository and pass our student class object. And if we run this and access student slash create student and give the name test A25 and school name GTech Fluent, and if I post this, data will get add and will return to the view. Let's access the student list, student slash student list. If you see, we are not getting our newly added here. This is because the dependency mapping which we have did into our startup file, we have mapped the dependency as a scope. So if you have any doubt or a query on this, we have already covered this in our previous video. So you can go and watch our previous video. So for now, we'll change this to the singleton as we require the one object through the application. So let's run and see. And let's access student slash create student, give the name, and click on the create. Okay, and let's try to access student list. Now if you see, we are getting the newly added record inside our list. So if you notice, if I not provide any value inside our control, and if I click on the create, it will post and blank record getting added inside our student list like this. So as of now, we don't have any validation implemented. In our next tutorial, we will see how to implement the model validation into our ASP.NET Core MVC application. So this is the some example of the model binding considering the primitive types and the complex type into ASP.NET Core MVC. So please let us know if anyone has any query or doubt. We will meet in our next video. Thank you.